I didn't get it either.
Mr. McGregor, remember the farmer and the pizza buttons from
Peter
you were
Rabbit.
at the-
Oh.
Farmer.
Oh, too far from you.
I know. Hey, and if it's far for you, what do you think it is for me?
Well, that
And-
may be an indication it's further from you.
Yeah, and sometimes we can be real surprised. Now, just because people come to the table doesn't necessarily mean that all is well. And many of you may have been in negotiations that look something like this.
Do you want to read it for those?
Yeah, I will. If you go across the panels at the top, first, the guy's imagining punching him, then booting him, then hanging him, then boiling him in oil, then running him through with the sword, and then the boss who's imagining all this says the corporation appreciates the clear and cogent outline of your union's demand and promises to give it the most serious consideration. May I suggest that we set a date for our next meeting that will give us enough time to formulate counter-proposals. And rather than think that's phony, you know, maybe that's as good as we can get right now. And you know, in a stylized situation, we may not expect much more. I don't know where I got this, and it's not a good copy, but it's litigation. And I guess that's the judge inside and picks the winner, and the other guy shoots them both. And in mediation, we can see what happens. I like the idea. I think one of my favorite mediation cartoons is this one. There's a series of dragon ones. This is one I pulled out. One has all the Knights of the Round Table on one side of the table and all the dragons on the other side.
Do we know that he's not an attorney?
Pardon? Do we know?
Yeah. It looks like this is a real case.
And, you know, lest we talk about the weirdness in mediation and the problems, and we're going to look at more conflict problems in a minute, but lest we do, let's realize that good things can happen from conflict. You know, Tricia, you gave us a great one where they're looking at their employee differently. And so often we kind of feel like it's all wonderful and everything, and wonder if we missed out on something, and who knows, we could have. To be in conflict is not necessarily a bad thing.
Could you read that?
Yes. We've had 15 years of harmonious married life, plus 3 healthy, happy, and trouble-free kids. I wonder sometimes if we're missing out. And I wonder what la-la land they live in, if anybody can say that. Well, you know, that's mediation, and you all know it. I'm not having to explain mediation to you. Most of you have worked at CCR and know that we have a form that we use that if we're training or in peer evaluation that we fill out on someone when they mediate, either in training, in a role play, or in peer evaluation. And there are 3 criteria. One is that the person be safe. They've got to be neutral. They've got to be able to control the table and not let anger just, rule. They've got to hold confidentiality and be safe. They also have to be competent, using the techniques that are taught. Usually when I'm in this room for a training or something, there's a flip chart there showing all the techniques, flip side and reality testing and things like this. Can they use these to move the parties along? That's competent. And to mediate, you have to be judged safe and competent. There's a 3rd category on there that's called artist. And that's kind of a funny one. Is a person an artist in their mediation? And it's a little hard to quantify what an artist is, even to qualify. sometimes it's done by the tingle of the spine more than anything else. But are they doing the things that just, whether through timing or imagination or creativity, that is going beyond what basic skill and attitude is for mediation? And I like to think in its better moments, humor is a tool of artistry, that it's something the artist uses. And Audrey, you said you wanted to come to upgrade your skills. Well, you know, to have humor as an arrow in the quiver. Now many of us are archers, some more of us may be golfers, to have it be a club in a bag. I've got some clubs in my bag that I never use. It's been a long time since I've hit a 3-iron. I'll hit a 5-wood, you know. But to at least be able to use all the clubs in the bag. And some of us don't have it in the bag, and some of us kind of have it in the bag but don't use it. And some of us feel like, oh gosh, if I use that thing, I'm going to be making a mistake. And you can make mistakes. And you can be an artist and not safe. We peer mediated a fella a month or so back, Cookie, you'll remember that we couldn't figure out, was he just disobeying all the things that we taught him, or was he an artist? You know, was he just ignorant, or did he just have this intuitive sense? And we're saying, yeah, be intuitive, but please, you know, do the basics that you've taught. Let the system work for you. So even if you're good with humor, it doesn't necessarily make you safe. But I would like you not to be scared to try. This is M. Griffin talking. I don't work for the center, so you can get mad at me and stand.
We'll report you to Brad.
Pardon?
We may report you to Brad.
That's right. That's right. Well, it will happen. Actually, though, humor can be a powerful weapon in the arsenal of the mediator. There was a survey of Iowa mediators that all that were licensed in Iowa, and they listed 37 different techniques that had been generated by the mediators themselves. And humor ranked 20th out of 37 in the most valuable techniques for this broad spectrum group in Iowa. If I lived in Iowa, I think I'd want to be as humorous as possible. And you bet. Notice that Patricia, when she asked about, gee, is it okay to be this? Did you notice how her face lit up when she said it? Probably one of the best things that I think we can do to be humorous and have it taken the right way is smile. The old Westerns used to, you know, it's a you dirty, yellow-livered, low-down, you know, and the other guy at the bar would say, smile when you say that, partner. You can take some risks if you smile a lot. It's hard to smile if we're scared, if we're afraid of making a mistake. But if we're comfortable enough with who we are and think we kind of got the procedure down, and we aren't worried if the mediation doesn't settle. I mean, it's their deal, it's not our deal. We can begin to take some risks, and one of those risks is to loosen up in our face. And so I strongly recommend that we all be like that. Patricia, excuse me. I like to be like Patricia. I am going to show you a few more cartoons to show you the kind of conflicts that they can be funny. You know, I feel cartoonists are modern day prophets who point out things to us in society. And I've got a batch here of cartoons of all different sorts of problems that bring people in conflict. And we won't spend real long on this, but I'll just run by them fast and see if we can have some fun with them. You remember Peanuts? Peanuts avoids. I'm not going to read them all to you. I'm just going to show them unless there's something that you particularly want to talk about. about. Dogs and cats are surrogates for sexes, for male and female, usually in cartoons. What is it about you anyway? And, or it could be different races or different cultures, something, and we really wonder. Have you ever noticed in a juvenile mediation, graffiti or vandalism, the question the offended party, if they've taken the time to come, the question they almost always have is I just want to know why they did it. I want to, and that's very important to them. There certainly can be age that comes in. Those who are young want to take the place of those who are old and have their rightful place. And we're back to women. This is one of my favorite ones. The Committee on Women's Rights will now come to order. I got to tell you, I serve on an international board of 12 people, and we have 2 women on it, and there are men on there that think that that's at least one too many, if not 2, and to work on that is real hard. People in uniforms, of course, can do it. Some of you may remember Smokey the Bear. People in authority, and here's authority too. Army can do it. I understand the mattress tags don't read quite the same way, but I always got a kick out of that. We understand you tore the little tag off your mattress.
Do not remove cats.
Under penalty of life.
I guess I don't read the tags.
Yeah.
Probably remove them before you read them.
And we all know a librarian or two. And a boss like that. For interpersonal communication, people with proxemics and distance. And sometimes might does seem to make right out there in the world. And we get a lot of conflict from the courts. The courts don't always solve conflict. As you know, it can be generated there. And a lot of times there's bias in the courts. And this isn't counseling, this is mediation. She says, I hate his approach to counseling. We can tell people that it really is a crapshoot with a judge or a jury, and sometimes juries do hang. People want to hang them. My wife served on a jury that was, there were, of course, 12 people on it. It was a 2-month trial. They deliberated for 2 weeks and hung at 9 to 3. People would go to sleep on the floor. People would, during the deliberations and everything. I mean it's just a wild one. So anytime you're trying to assure people or at least suggest the potential that, that we don't always know what happens in court, or ask them, are you sure you've got a case that will win? Believe me, you're on safe ground. This is one of my favorite. I have this on the cover of one of the books. Isn't that great? I teach at a Christian college, and I have a book on religious influence and persuasion, and I have that on the cover. And again, within a religious context. And one more. It's a special model for committees. It comes equipped with 1 gas pedal, 4 steering wheels, and 10 sets of brakes. I understand that that could be for CCR board or whatever. Yeah. Booth is one of my favorite cartoonists, and he draws these kind of Cro-Magnon creatures. You may as well go home. It's obvious this meeting isn't going to settle anything. It's the peer evaluation committee. And finally, again, I think of the international board that I serve on. Protocol or no, if he doesn't stop talking soon, I'm going to eat him. Okay, there's a lot of problems out there. And if we could catch the light. There's a lot of problems out there. They come to mediation. The question is, how can you use humor in mediation intentionally to help move the mediation along, change the atmosphere, make things more creative, etc. I'd like to suggest to you that there are different kinds of humor and a taxonomy of humor. So, they have meters and a taxonomy or a classification of humor probably isn't overly helpful. I've read some books that try and do it. But from my own mediation experience, I've found at least 3 kinds of humor that are particularly helpful, and you may come up with more, and we'll see. But humor me, and let's look at the 3 first, and I'll give you an example or 2, and then I want to see if you can kick in your suggestions. The first is self-effacing humor. Thomas Hobbes, the philosopher, tried to analyze humor, and he said what it really is sudden derision. It's knocking someone. It's panning, criticizing, pulling down, kind of mean in a sense, and doing it suddenly. It's kind of like in the dining hall at the college where I teach, if someone drops a tray, everybody, yeah, and gee, I would like to be the guy that drops that tray. Sudden derision, and the fact that it's sudden makes a difference. Well, I do not recommend being derisive of parties in mediation, usually, and or almost never. On the other hand, there is one person who you can knock with safety, and that's yourself. And if we show that we are dumb or stupid or ridiculous, that's, we're giving permission for others to laugh at us, particularly if we show that we know we're ridiculous and it's okay, that we regard ourselves as ridiculous. And give you a few examples. For a decade or 2, I did a fair amount of speaking after I started publishing. I get invites to college campuses, and there's a lectureship called the Staley Lectureship where they pay fairly good stipend and transportation, and you go to college campus for 3 days. I remember the first time I did one of these. I got an invite to do it. I was really full of myself. I was impressed with me. I'm doing a Staley. It sounds like a dance. And it was sort of, and I'm a pilot. I flew up to Minneapolis, was where this was, and I went there, and my wife was a little nervous because it was winter, and so I called Jeannie to let her know I'd gotten up there safely, and I was to be on in about 15 minutes, and I'm talking to Jeannie. Jackie's met Jeannie, and I'm talking to her, and I'm in my new suit. I only have one suit, but it was new, and it's a little older now. And I'm talking, whispering sweet nothings into my wife's ear, and talking, and I'm sitting here, and I suddenly looked down, and my hand had been in my pocket. I usually, even here, I talk with my hand in my pocket. And then I put it here, and I looked down, and the ballpoint pen had broken. And and I'm smearing ballpoint pen over my white shirt and light colored tie. Just, well, I say, I gotta go, Gene. You know, and I dash into the John, and I, you know, get a towel, a paper towel, and stuff, smear it around.
Bigger mess.
Yeah, it's worse. You know, and I'm on. And back at, you know, the motel, there's a change of clothes for tomorrow, but, you know, what do you do? And I just said, you know, I'm sorry, this is the first time you've had a klutz for a Staley lecture here at St. Paul's, and, you know, and went on. I spoke 3 times in large assemblies there. I spoke in 6 classes and some meetings in the dorm and everything. But at the end of the time, the only thing the college kids could talk about was that ballpoint pen. and they said, we couldn't believe that you joked about that. They said, everybody who comes here is so impressive, and yeah, you know, and the fact that you were willing to realize that you were foolish made us want to listen to you. I think that can happen in mediation. Just 2 personal examples outside of mediation. I was in the Philippines, and it was one of these things where you take a plane and a pump boat and a jeep and a bus, and then you're walking. And we were going over a gorge, and there was not a palm tree, a coconut tree down, and we had to go ford this gorge on a coconut tree. And, you know, they're all walking across. And finally, I got down on all 4s and was crawling on, and they started laughing at me. Leichen. That's a pig. You know, and I don't like being laughed at. But you know what? I started laughing, and every once in a while we'd see another pig, and I go, you know, breaking laughing. And they said, most people who come here are very uptight. Are we going to lose credibility? Possible. But I think in general, if we laugh at ourselves, if there's a reason, you know, don't spill cocoa just to be a slob. But I think it can be appreciated. First time a family member was in the hospital. Well, it was my daughter who was in the hospital, an extended stay, and she was in a large day room there at this hospital, and my wife and I would visit whenever we could. She was, and I went in, and I suddenly noticed that people were sort of looking at me funny. And Sharon said, "Oh, Dad, don't worry." She said, "I know they're looking at you funny." She said, "It's because I told them you were an evangelist." And I said, "Well, gee, Sharon, you know, I mean, I'm a person of faith, and I think that we always got to be, you know, as the Bible says, ready to share our faith to someone who asks." And I teach at a Christian school. And you know, I'm not an evangelist. She said, "Oh, I know, Dad. I know that." She said, "But I told him," she says, "it gets me lots of sympathy." And I thought, well, that's not a bad price to pay. You know, if she can get some sympathy here, she's going through a rugged time. And I think there's something to be gained if we're willing not to take ourselves too seriously, take mediation seriously, but not ourselves.
You remember the Columbo shows?
Yes.
In some of my classes as a psychologist, we used to talk about kind of taking the Columbo approach and just sort of being a little bumbling and
Yeah.
kind of say, you know, I really don't understand, and maybe you could help me explain this a little, explain it to me, and that kind of
Diffuses.
Yeah,
it can.
But how heavy is that in mediation?
Pardon?
How do you use that in mediation?
Well, a few ways. One, if you have ever seen my writing, when I used to write notes for my kids at school, the teachers would send it back and say, "This was written by a kid." And so when I write up an agreement by print, I go very slowly. And it's block letters and everything, and it takes an awful long time. And I just tell them, "Hey, yeah, I'm sorry you got a klutz. Here, scribble, dibble, and live with it." And usually by that time, you know, by the time I'm writing something down, the thing's moved pretty far along. But that can help. I have, we've moved a lot. When we used to be over in Jackson when I first started mediating, there was a funny little office there where you remember, Cookie, on Jackson? And the mediation rooms were sort of in a corridor, and to go to caucus, you know, you showed someone out and there was a snap lock door. And, you know, he usually remembered doing it. There was a time I locked myself out, and there was no one else in the center at this point. I guess the caseworker had stepped out and everything. And I'm sitting there with one of the parties pounding on the door, and the other person was, you know, and it's the door, and then a mediation door, and everything, and we're sitting there pounding together, and we just went in laughing. It changed. The caucus had gone awful, but we went in.
Shared experience.
Yeah, it was a shared experience. Some of you know that I was asked, along with two other mediators here, to mediate down in Beverly, on the south side of Chicago. It was a community dispute where people were at each other's throats. A real long block with no cross street. It was racial, it was drugs, there had been a stabbing, they were calling the building inspectors on each other. I mean, it was real mean. And we did phone interviews, and Brad told us, or Shireen told us that, hey, you don't have to use the CCR model, the alderman is called, try anything. And this was not intended as humorous, but when we got people together finally, the few people who were willing to talk to each other and indicated some hope, we decided that we would not be aloof, neutral in the sense of, back then we decided being neutral meant we're for everybody. And that we would participate, and we did a team building exercise in there to start with, just have people tell two stories that you would have to know if you were going to know that person. And I went first. And I had held out this information until I was with people that I felt were of some goodwill. There were about 3 families on each side. And I told them, I went to school there. I went to Morgan Park High School in the community. And I referred to the movie My Bodyguard, where the guy was tyrannized and everything. And that was me. I was tyrannized in the high school. Just like some of the people were being tyrannized in the neighborhood. And I described some of the things and tried to do it in a way that didn't say this was tragic, but I didn't know what to do, and I laughed about it, and they laughed, and the sharing that went on there was just amazing. I talked to Julie's last name, Stratton, who's a professional mediator, and she opened up, and what we heard from these people was amazing, and the agreement just came around after that. So those are some of the ways I do. How about you? Do you have any experiences of vulnerability, of self-effacing, of saying, yeah, I'm kind of ridiculous, that you've run across?
You tried to, I just tried to forget.
I mentioned I work in a prison setting, and we have hostage negotiation teams, and I'm on our team, and we also have the SWAT team, and they send a negotiator generally to kind of work with the SWAT team to send information back. So our training, we all are supposed to be trained in everything. Never would I have imagined they would think of me, the psychologist, going with the SWAT team, and what they did, they said, I know, what would you do? What would be your role if you were sent to be the liaison with the SWAT team? All I could come up with was, if you send me, we're really in trouble.
Prepare for to be a hostage.
What prison are you at?
In California.
The prison is a tough place to be vulnerable. If there's any place where one is not vulnerable, it's usually in prison. My best friend was in prison.
that thing about sharing something about yourself really works, you know, something that people might not expect, you know, because it reminded me of,